Early because of college football. John Myers isn't here. Hey, what else can we talk about? How about some racing? We're going to do it anyway. That's right. For 2 hours leading up to kickoff on our flagship station, or at least pregame kickoff, we're going to have you covered. And some of the things, just some of the things that we're going to be talking about. Are we close to Indycar taking the series outside of North America? It seems like one of those things that almost everybody wants to do now. NFL did it last night, for example. More news on silly season moves in Formula One. Formula E's silly off-season continues to see a lot more movement. Hey, diecast collectors, we got news for you. Not just from the world of NASCAR either. Stick around, we'll give you that. Got to be aware of a couple of deals that we're talking about here. And, oh, by the way, the playoffs are set when it comes to the Cup Series. All that and more coming up on this week's CRN.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. More racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Yeah, we are. Let's get into it here. I'm Steve West, Matt Nicholson joining for, hour one.
Yep.
So producer John couldn't be here with us. You will have to leave because coaching officially begins for you this weekend.
Yep. I get to go play Hugh Freeze today.
Well, hopefully you will be as, if not more, successful.
I hope so.
We're just going to base that off of last year. I have no idea what he's going to do this year. So
we're in much better shape this year.
Yes.
So I just hope we go on the pace that we're on this year.
There you
not
go.
Last year.
All right. Welcome into the show. Early as we are, our flagship or radio station, and we are back on the radio station, as you can tell, has Georgia football. We talked about this last week on the YouTube-only show. They are a Georgia affiliate. They've got a 1 o'clock kickoff and a 4-hour-long pregame show. What are you talking about for 4 hours? And they're not the only one. Don't get me wrong. I'm not just picking on Georgia here.
Oh, yeah.
Almost every SEC team has a 4-hour-long pregame show. What the heck are you talking about for 4 hours? So anyway, we're on for an hour early. We're on an hour earlier, but we'll get it done. Don't worry about it. Let's talk about last week, shall we? Moonlighters out in force Saturday afternoon at Darlington. One of them able to get into overtime, and with the help of his pit crew, come out leading the pack. He ultimately won the race. It was beginning to look like Sheldon Creed, though, might finally get that elusive monkey off of his back, talking about getting that first Xfinity Series win. Took the lead on lap 97 of 150, and he was holding on to it like a pair of vice grips. Then A.J. Allmendinger slapped the wall on lap 143. Brought out a caution, resulted in pit stops that got Christopher Bell out front. Cup Series Moonlighter finished the race off with the win. Cole Custer in second, Sheldon Creed relegated to third. Trailed by another Moonlighter in Chase Elliott, then Sammy Smith, Jesse Love, Shane Van Gisbergen. They had Chandler Smith, Austin Hill, Justin Allgaier making up the top 10, and with no change in the winners, amongst the winners in the series, SVG remains your one seed with 3 wins. In the battle for the playoffs, Sheldon Creed 99 above the cut line with, is it 3 or 2 more races to go?
Believe 2.
Okay.
Believe 2.
So mathematically, still possible that he could get bounced out. Unlikely, considering how many other people you got to jump over to get to him.
That is true.
But I'll just say it, mathematically, he could still be out, depending on what happens. A.J. Allmendinger's 95 over, looking pretty comfortable. Parker Kligerman less comfortable, 34 up. Sammy Smith, very nervous, 5 over the cut line. 5 under the cut line, Ryan Sieg. Nobody else is within 100 points of the cut line. So it's going to take a win for all intents and purposes.
That last name is the one with the circle, stars, and everything beside it.
Yeah.
Especially today.
Yeah.
Especially today.
Yeah. Ryan, there's no doubt about it. Ryan is good there, and
Home game, too.
Yeah. And let's face it, the Fords are generally quite good under the super speedway kind of rules, which is what you get at Atlanta.
Very, very true.
So, all right. Be something to watch. Plus, again, kind of a wild card race, not as much as, say, Talladega would be or will be when we get there. But still, super speedway rules can kind of play a little bit. So we'll have to see what happens.
They can.
Saturday night racing last weekend at the famed Milwaukee Mile for IndyCar. First race of a doubleheader weekend for them. Pato O'Ward rolling off 6 on the evening, but he was able to weave his way through traffic. And with pit stops going on without drama, he was able to grab the lead and held it to the checkered flag. His third win of 2024, besting Will Power by just under 2 seconds. Connor Daly with a good run. We'll talk about him a little bit later on. Santino Ferrucci also with a good run. Talk about him, too. Alex Palou, your points leader, claims 6th. Linus Lundqvist, Alexander Rossi, Scott McLaughlin, also in there, Christian Lundgaard and Scott Dixon making up your top 10 with the second race to deal with. We will not mention the points in this particular position. That'll bring us to Sunday morning, as soon as I can get my computer to work right. We got rolling with Formula One. They were running the Italian Grand Prix on the famed Monza course. Now, if you want to make the fans in Italy really happy, you park a Ferrari in victory lane. Charles Leclerc was able to do just that. Credited the team's bold call to go for a 1 pit stop strategy as the main reason he was able to do it. Lando Norris parked his McLaren on the pole, but he was passed by his teammate Oscar Piastri on the first lap. But Ferrari, noting that every other team seemed to be going with that two pit stop race strategy. I'm trying to go too fast. I've got 2 hours. Settle down, Wes. They decided to try something different. They went 1 stop for their 2 drivers, both of them. And it had Leclerc out front as the laps were winding down. Now, the McLaren twins were able to take advantage of newer tires and the older tires of Leclerc's Ferrari teammate, Carlos Sainz. They were going away on him. But even though Leclerc was pretty much having the same problem and the McLaren guys were eating into his lead big time, they just ran out of laps, basically, and Leclerc gets the win by more than 2.5 seconds. Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris in second and third, respectively. Carlos Sainz was able to hold on to fourth, just beating out Lewis Hamilton. Max Verstappen, 6th. Let me repeat that. Max Verstappen, 6th.
He is human.
George Russell, Sergio Perez, Alex Albon, Kevin Magnussen filling out the top 10, a rare top 10 appearance for Kevin this year. Things a little bit closer again on the points. Verstappen does lead the way, 302. 241 for Lando Norris. Charles Leclerc with the win, up to 217. Oscar Piastri at 197. 184 for Carlos Sainz. Lewis Hamilton has 164. Then Sergio Perez with 143. George Russell, 128. And then you drop all the way down to 50 for Fernando Alonso and 24 for Lance Stroll. things could still change down there at the bottom. Not necessarily Fernando Alonso, but Lance Stroll, 24, not comfortable. He's only a couple of points ahead of, for example, Nico Hulkenberg for that 10th place. Speaking of not comfortable, the Constructors' Cup lead. Red Bull's lead over McLaren down to a 446 to 438 gap.
Yeah, we actually, for the first time in 3 years-ish.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, we actually have a race here.
That we do. Ferrari's not all that terrifically far behind with 407, so if they can suddenly get hot, who knows? Maybe they can make it a three-way race. Mercedes, not really a factor. They're all by themselves in fourth place, 292. Then you drop all the way down to 74 for Aston Martin. They're kind of comfortable in that position in fifth. Then it becomes a little bit of a battle. VCarb 34 did not score any points last weekend. Haas, Kevin Magnussen scored 1, so they're up to 28, so only 6 back. Alpine sits there with 13, Williams 6. Sauber remains scoreless and probably will be for the rest of the year, truth be told. Race number 2 of the weekend for IndyCar at the Milwaukee Mile coming up next. And as the checkers were flying, 6-time champion Scott Dixon was closing in on Scott McLaughlin. Just ran out of laps. McLaughlin gets his 3rd win of the year. That ties him with Pato Award for the most on the year. The two Scotts were followed by Colton Herta. There's that name again, huh? Santino Ferrucci 4th. Hey, there's that name again, too. Then you got Marcus Ericsson, Alexander Rossi, Renus VK, Kyle Kirkwood, Romain Grosjean, and Will Power making up the top 10. So basically, it comes down to Nashville next weekend for the title. We're going to be there. We'll have eyes on it, and we will be able to give you in-person reports.
I am looking forward to an IndyCar oval race.
It should be interesting. Alex Palou, 525 points. He's your leader. Will Power trails by 33. Nothing that comfortable there. Scott McLaughlin's 50 back. Colton Herta 57 back. So mathematically, those are your guys. Everybody else, pretty much out of it. As far as the manufacturer standings, Chevrolet now leads Honda 1,403 to 1,253 in the manufacturer standings. If Honda can have a really good day at Nashville, that could still turn things over.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I didn't mention the Rookie of the Year standings. The championship has been declared. We'll get back to that in IndyCar news. Then we go to Sunday evening in Darlington, where it was sure looking like the Kyle Larson show. He grabbed the lead early, claimed both stage wins as well, but as we know, because we've seen this in person, generally the driver that wins both stages does not win the race.
That's very true. Very true.
And a gamble by Ross Chastain after a late pit stop to stay out on old tires. While it didn't pay off for either him or Larson, it did pay off for one Chase Briscoe. He was running second to Larson most of the night. He saw an opening. He dropped down in turn 3. And he did something that at Darlington makes everything around you stand up on end or pucker all at the same time.
Yeah.
You go too wide at Darlington, you really kind of, we stared at it a lot in our 2 years up there in the PA booth. We saw a lot of too wide, and we kept going, can they make it? Can they make it stick? And we would see sometimes when they could, and we'd see other times when they couldn't. When you go 3 wide at Darlington, that's not a track that is generally wide enough to go 3 wide.
No, not especially in turn 3.
Took a lot of intestinal fortitude, Chase, and he made it stick, and he got the lead, and he would make that stick too. Went on to claim the win. This is the first for Stewart-Haas Racing since the 2022 season, and it comes in their final season as Stewart-Haas Racing, so he locks himself into the playoffs after, of course, they cleared post-race inspection. Kyle Busch was trying to close. He had newer tires than Chase Briscoe, and Chase even admitted if there had been maybe 5 more laps left in the race, Kyle would have gotten him. But, hey, it's the way it goes. Kyle Busch ends up second, could not get close enough. Christopher Bell third. Kyle Larson drops to 4th. Ross Chastain making up the top 5. Rest of your top 10, Chris Buescher, Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, Corey LaJoie, and Tyler Reddick. The 10th place finish for Reddick. Larson coming home in 4th. Reddick gets the regular season title. He also gets a 15-point bonus for the playoffs. All of that despite a major stomach virus that he dealt with all night. We talked about this during a Cross Flags podcast. That guy right there knows a little bit about being under the weather and driving. And at Darlington on a really, really hot night, oof.
Yeah, there's a difference between driving with a flu and driving with a stomach flu.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That brings us to the playoffs here. Darlington wrapped up the regular season title. Your number 1 seed is indeed Kyle Larson. Christopher Bell's your 2 seed. Tyler Reddick's your 3, and William Byron's your 4. Defending champion Ryan Blaney comes in as your 5 seed. Denny Hamlin's your 6. 7 seed is Chase Elliott. Brad Keselowski is 8. Followed by Joey Logano, Austin Cindric, Daniel Suarez, and Alex Bowman, with those immediately on the hot seat being Chase Briscoe, Harrison Burton, Martin Truex Jr., and Ty Gibbs. 14 winners made the playoffs. 2 got in on points. It leaves out Austin Dillon, who, yes, won, but of course we have been detailing it. Had all the benefits of that win revoked by NASCAR for aggressively playing bumper cars at Richmond. And let's face it, it's something of a minor all-star race for some of the people that were left out, led by, of course, Kyle Busch. He's not the only one, though. We have, over the course of at least the last 10 years, maybe longer, given our choices for each round. In other words, the first 4 out, the next 4 out, the next 4 out, who are going to make it to the championship race as the title contenders, and ultimately who we think is going to be hoisting the trophy at the end. We did that during the Crossed Flags podcast, so we were not going to repeat it here. If you'd like to know who it is that we pick, by all means, check out the Crossed Flags podcast. It's up available right now to you on CRN Live. I would say wait until we're done with the show, though, before you go check it out. Final race of your regular season in the NHRA held their finals on Monday, Labor Day in Indianapolis. Top Fuel coming down to a battle between Clay Millican and Steve Torrence. Torrence with the quicker reaction time, but then began to spin his tires. That allowed Millican to cruise by for the win. It's his first ever against Torrence in the final round. He came in 0 for 3 previously. Pulled a 3.792 ET, 327.82 miles per hour, gets his first win of 2024 and his 7th career win. Congratulations. Austin Prock making it to the finals of Funny Car against Ron Capps. At the light, the advantage to Prock. He held the advantage to the other end, running a 3.885 ET, 327.98 miles per hour. That's his 5th win of 2024 and 9th so far in his career. You think John Force is doing the equivalent of turning somersaults, going, that's my kid? Yeah.
I would say so for sure.
Nice choice.
Yep.
Jed Coughlin Jr. taking on Aaron Stanfield in the Pro Stock Car Finals. Stanfield pulls a really nice .017 reaction time. You don't get much better than that, but there was this one guy that said, hey, hold my beer. He uses that to get a win. 5.490 ET, 6.561. I'm sorry. Yeah. Wrong ET. 6.561 is the actual full ET. The 5.490 is the 1,000-foot line. 6.561 ET at 209.36 miles per hour locks up his 6th win of 2024, 21st win of his career.
Or did this other guy say, here, hold the handlebars?
Yeah, pretty much. Gage Herrera. I know. How many times have we said that name? Oh, almost every time we talk about Pro Stock Motorcycle Finals. Right? How hard is it to pull a .000 reaction time?
I'm not a drag racer, but I'm sure it's pretty tough.
Gage Herrera did it, and did it in the finals. Pulled it off up against Angie Smith. Herrera checked in at the other end with a 6.763 ET, 198.70 miles per hour at the other end. His 7th win of the year, all but 2 of the 2024 Pro Stock motorcycle events have gone to Gage Herrera. Chase for the championship is now set. 12 drivers qualified in Top Fuel, and in seed order they are Doug Kalitta, Sean Langdon, Justin Ashley, Steve Torrence, and Antron Brown, your top 5. Next 5, Clay Millican, Tony Stewart, your 7 seed, Tony Schumacher, Billy Torrence, Brittany Force, and then Josh Hart and Sean Reed fill out that field. Austin Prock is your top seed in Funny Car, trailed by Bob Tasca III, defending champion Matt Hagan, J.R. Todd, and John Force. Now, we mentioned John Force specifically because he's the driver getting the credit for everything that car is pulling off. Remember that, okay? So it doesn't matter who's behind the wheel. John Force will get the credit all the remaining races.
Yep.
So he's your 5 seed. Ron Capps is your 6, Blake Alexander, Daniel Wilkerson, Chad Green, Alexis DeJoria, Cruz Pedregon, and Buddy Hull all make it in. Now, Paul Lee did finish 9th in points, but he didn't qualify for all of his events, so he was not eligible to make the playoffs or the chase for the championship in this case. 12 also made the Pro Stock Car Chase lineup. Dallas Green leads the way. Greg Anderson, Erica Enders, Aaron Stanfield, Jed Coughlin Jr., Troy Coughlin Jr., Jerry Tucker, Christian Quadra, Derek Kramer, Eric Latino, Mason McGahey, and Matt Hartford make up that field. And in Pro Stock Motorcycle, I know you're shocked, Gage Herrera is your 1 seed. Trailed by Matt Smith, John Hall, Richard Gadsden, Chase Van Sant. Got Angie Smith, Gianna Evaristo, Hector Arana Jr., the state of Alabama, and the city of Birmingham's own Steve Johnson is in there, along with Chris Bostic. Now, as busy as last weekend was, this weekend, almost the exact opposite. I say almost because we got 2 events. Atlanta is the host of both. Xfinity Series runs the Focused Health 250 as it airs on USA and PRN Radio, starts 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. The only other racing this weekend, as mentioned, also in Atlanta, the Cup Series set to run the Quaker State 400 available at Walmart. Who knew we could get an entire race at Walmart? Airs on USA and PRN Radio, starts 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. That means Craftsman Truck Series, IndyCar, Formula One, and the NHRA, all still in season of the series that we cover, are all off this week.
It is going to be hilarious. It is going to be hilarious to hear Lee Diffie say available at Walmart.
Yeah.
Walmart.
Yeah, I would agree. But I'm going to be there, so I'm not going to be listening to it. I'm going to be in there listening to it in person and coming home.
Oh, you'll hear.
Yeah. We're sitting right off of turn 4. Should be a lot of fun. All right. So with that being said, let's take a break here. We got to get some news in before that guy's got to go coach a football team. So we'll get in as much as we can. And, of course, I'll be solo for hour 2. Stick around.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back in. Appreciate you joining us here on this early edition of CRN. And again, we're doing that because of college football, but that's all right. We'll survive. Kind of cool stuff here.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about the year that Stewart-Haas Racing has had, and it is, they've been on an emotional roller coaster.
That's very much a lack of an understatement.
Yeah, that may be one of the bigger understatements of the year. And really, really cool to see this video that came out on Tuesday. In celebrating the win of the Southern 500, got the 14 car into the Cup Series playoffs, Chase Briscoe addressed his crew. The whole organization, really, at Stewart-Haas Racing, noted that it was the crew that could have they could have given up earlier this year when Tony Stewart and Gene Haas had that company-wide meeting and letting them know that Stewart-Haas Racing would not exist in its current form after the season. Some weeks later, as we now know, Gene Haas announced he was going to keep one of the Cup Series charters, continue with the two-car Xfinity Series operation, but that Stewart wasn't going to be affiliated with the team, and it was going to change and become Haas Factory Team. Since then, we've seen Cole Custer is set to be moving back up into the Cup Series to take over the 41 in 2025. They'll bring on Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed as the Xfinity Series drivers. And what we know now is this: Josh Berry is going to the Wood Brothers, number 21. Noah Gragson is moving to Front Row Motorsports, even though they have not announced which car number he'll take. Ryan Preece and Riley Erbst are officially still looking for rides. We'll get back to that. And Chase Briscoe is set to move to Joe Gibbs Racing next year. He was able to, with the win, though, put the 14 in the playoffs, as we noted during the recap. And noting that is in the same number 14 that his mentor and his hero and his boss for now, Tony Stewart, drove for the organization, he said that he felt this team is capable of doing exactly what they did 13 years ago. You might remember Tony Stewart Smoke made the playoffs that year without a win, and then during the playoffs reeled off 5 wins in 10 races and claimed the 2011 Cup Series title. Can they? Well, yeah, they can. Will they? That's a different story. But the team has something to fight for as well. And you and I talked a little bit about this on Crossed Flags podcast on Wednesday. And we're already hearing and seeing some of this, that the other 3 teams are beginning to rally around that 14 car and that 14 team and trying to do their level best to help him move past round 1 and as deep as they can go.
I seen something, I forgot who I seen release it, but I've seen something somewhere that the 14 and the 10 are going to have identical parts and identical setup on their cars to where the 10 car can help the 14 continuously find something every week.
There you go.
In case one may be better than the other.
Yeah. So there you go. And if you think that that's going to leave out the 4 and the 41, sorry, it's not going to. This is the all for one and one for all situation at this point in time.
Yeah.
You know, and Chase said later on that if he had not gotten the checkered flag at Darlington, that there was every possibility that there were some crew members who might have just not just kind of quit on the year, but quit, period.
That would not have surprised me if that had happened.
Sure. I mean, at that point in time, what all do you got to fight for? That becomes the big question, right? So now they've got something to fight for. Bless you.
Thank you.
And it'll be interesting to see how this works together for the team. Then there's the guy that Chase Briscoe is going to be taking over for. Martin Truex Jr. may be stepping away from full-time Cup Series racing and turning the 19 car over to Chase Briscoe next year, but he's not done racing. He's just done full-time. He talked on Wednesday during Cup Series playoff media days, said that he is going to race some select races in 2025 and noted that the Daytona 500 was first up on the list. He will attempt to qualify for it. He added that his crew chief for the race will be the one that led him to his 2017 Cup Series title. His crew chief will be Cole Pern. Okay, then. Said the car number for the race is either going to be 78, which was, of course, the number that they were running with Furniture Row Racing when they won the title, or 56, which is the number that he used early on in his career and one that he calls, quote-unquote, his number. Who exactly is going to field the car, not yet known, but Denny Hamlin, 2311, not 23 by 1, racing owner, said that, quote, 2311 and Joe Gibbs Racing are kind of looking at the options and figuring out what's the best avenue for it. Certainly having Martin in the 500 is going to be exciting. I'd be shocked if 2311 didn't put this car out there.
I'm not going to be surprised to see 4 2311 haulers run through the gate.
Not at all. Not at all. The Athletic is reporting, and remember, this is The Athletic. We haven't heard from RFK Racing yet on this, but they are reporting RFK Racing is indeed set to expand to 3 full-time Cup Series teams. Now, this is something we predicted a couple of weeks ago when it was announced that they were getting an influx of sponsorship. Kroger's going to move to RFK Racing from JTG Dougherty Racing after this year. So we said, yeah, probably going to go full-time. As to the driver of that car, the site reports that it appears current SHR driver Ryan Preece is going to be signed to drive for them. Again, nothing official from RFK, okay? Team co-owner Brad Keselowski, in talking on Media Days Thursday, said, quote, "We don't have any announcements that we're ready to make, but hopefully we'll have something to share with everybody here in the next month or so. But nothing publicly I'm ready to talk about yet." He also did not talk about the charter situation for that third car. Here's what we know. The Haas factory team is set to have their technical alliance with RFK Racing. That would be one of those little things that would help grease those pads, if you will, by selling them that charter as opposed to selling it to somebody else.
True.
But that doesn't mean that that's going to happen. We don't know anything. We're just saying it would seem to kind of all fit together. As to whether or not those puzzle pieces actually fit when you try and put them together, we'll find out. Rick Hendrick and his championship contending driver Kyle Larson talking about running the double again in 2025. Of course, we've talked about that earlier this year, the Indy 500, Coca-Cola 600 on the same day. As we noted on the show, Hendrick, Larson, and Arrow McLaren Racing signed a 2-year deal. The second year is an option year, so it doesn't necessarily have to be for 2025, and potentially it might not happen at all. But for Larson, it appears that the option not to do it was never truly on the table. Said that he's ready to go again. Quote, "I would love to. We're still working on it. It's progressing, so I like that, but obviously things can always change." Pretty much lets it be known that Rick Hendrick has the final say for Larson, which I understand that. I mean, Rick Hendrick as the team owner has a pretty serious investment in Kyle Larson and that 5 car and the team as a whole.
Absolutely.
So I understand why it would seem like he's got the final say. Reports claim that the final up or down vote could be revealed this coming week, but we're not really 100% certain on that because there's a lot of logistics that have got to go on here. From likely to happen, because let's face it, Kyle Larson's probably going to be running the double at some point in time, even if it's not next year, to the unlikely when it comes to Hendrick Motorsports. After Darlington, Alex Bowman found himself in an odd situation, fending off the rumor mill. We don't have a whole lot of rumors when it comes to Hendrick drivers.
No.
We pretty much know. We pretty much know when it comes to the Hendrick quartet, it's either black or white. He's either in or he's out, right? Bowman was asked about his status in the number 48 with Ally Bank. Now think about this for a moment. Ally Bank just signed a 5-year extension to their partnership deal and said that they like Alex Bowman. Bowman told media on Wednesday of this week, "That rumor has certainly been annoying. My contract with Hendrick is through the end of 2026. All I can tell you is that my bosses have told me, is what my bosses have told me, and that there are no plans to change anything. Rumors are just rumors, and as far as I know, I'm driving the number 48 next year."
Yeah, but
now we heard something about this. You heard something about this earlier this week. So let's talk about what the rumor is.
The rumor that's out there. Let's word it that way. The rumor that's out there is that will supposedly be a three-way kind of a deal here.
Yeah, kind of, musical chairs, if you want to put it that way.
It involves Hendrick. It involves Spire. And it involves Rick Ware. Yes, I said Rick Ware.
Seems an odd choice considering that they drive Fords.
The rumor that is there, Bowman's going to go to the 7. Keyword rumor. Bowman's going to the 7. Ryan Preece would go to the 51.
Which does seem to fly in the face of the thing that we just talked about, him going to a third RFK racing car.
Which leaves open
The 48.
48, which leaves open another driver.
Mm-hmm.
That driver is Justin Haley. Because if Indigo Foxtrot, if that was to happen, the path, if Kroger is going to go, if Indigo Foxtrot is going over to RFK, which would leave JTG Jardy with no sponsorship, and you still got technically one charter of SHR still out there.
Yep.
Brad Keselowski and that group could essentially go ingest, inhabit, however you want to do it.
Yeah.
RFK, you've already got a built-in, in taking JTG, into RFK. There's your third charter. There's your sponsorship, and got your driver too.
Yeah.
It could be somewhat of a homecoming for Ricky Stenhouse.
Yeah, he'd be returning.
He would be returning. And then, because say that fourth charter that's out there from SHR gets bought by RFK, where's 2311's third charter going to come from? Who is Denny Hamlin about to buy out? He's about to buy somebody out.
Yeah.
Is he going to buy one of the charters from Rick Ware? Is he going to buy the charter from JTG Doherty? If they lose the sponsorship, because who are they going to pick up if they lose it? Brad Doherty and Tag DeShector is not going to just let the car run blank. You can't.
No, they don't have that kind of money.
So who are they going to pick it up from? I legitimately see the scenario that if RFK takes that fourth Stewart-Haas charter, 2311 would take JTG Doherty charter. I say that 5 times fast at 730. Get that charter. You've got driver, charter, and you've got an inventory of cars. All you got to really do is change bodies.
Yeah, because you just got to go from Chevy to Ford.
Go.
Again, all of this is rumor. None of this is confirmed. Not a single bit of it. So take it all with a big-time grain of salt. Bowman, one of the 16 drivers in the playoffs, added this, quote, "That's a rumor that I've heard for a month, and it's gotten to the point where I've picked up the phone and called everybody at Hendrick Motorsports, and everybody said absolutely not. So that's really all I have to go on. And I don't have any reason to believe anything other than that. There's no, you need to get this done to keep your job. So we'll find out. Time will tell how things go. I tend to think that the Ryan Preece to a third RFK Racing seems more likely.
It does.
You know, because again, Rick Hendrick is not the kind of guy who's going to sign you to a long-term extension and then bust you out of there before the contract is done. As a general rule, we haven't seen that from him. So could it happen? Yeah, I suppose it could.
He's essentially the only one you haven't seen it happen from.
Yeah. I suppose it could happen, but I'm not going to sit here and wait for it to happen because I don't expect it to.
Absolutely.
Again, these are all just rumors, and they get started by somebody who's trying to make a name in the business. We're in this business that we're in.
Yeah, and then people in social media see it, and they flippin' run with it.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it's true or not. So it was our duty here to let you know that rumor's out there. Do we believe it?
Nope.
No.
We will be to the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back in here. Final segment for Matt this morning here in studio, and then I'll be flying solo. That whole situation with the charter agreement when it comes to NASCAR. Good grief, this is turning into a big-time soap opera. Still unsigned. NASCAR apparently has moved. They seem to be willing, at least, to move a little bit on some of the demands of the teams. Reports from the Sports Business Journal stated on Monday, NASCAR would like to have this signed by this weekend. Guess what we haven't heard about? To avoid having this over their heads during the playoffs. The two sides have been in talks now really for about 2 years. They've come to terms on several aspects. One of the more important ones here, is that the teams will get a little bit more of a bigger percentage of the media rights contract side of things that has been signed with Fox and NBC, CW, Amazon Prime, and Warner Brothers Discovery. But there's still sticking points which keep the agreement from being signed and finalized among them, whether or not charters become permanent. And this is something that the teams are really, really pushing for, and NASCAR is hedging their bets on. So again, while NASCAR may have wanted it signed by this weekend, witness what I just said. Guess what we're not saying?
Yeah. Yep.
So it hasn't been signed yet, unless they signed it in secret last night and just haven't announced it.
Yeah.
And I doubt that. It was also noted that NASCAR Productions had film crews all over the garage area at Darlington last weekend, seemingly following several teams that were playoff bubble teams. And then some of the leaders as well, as they started to prepare for second season of the NASCAR docuseries on Netflix. Several teams are said to have given permission for NASCAR Productions to follow their drivers with a caveat that they can exercise a clause to pull that permission should a charter agreement fall through the cracks once again.
Makes sense.
Basically, these teams are starting to hold things like a really popular docuseries hostage.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Better figure it out, NASCAR.
Yep.
Better figure it out. Brandon Jones going to be moving next year. He's going to go back to Joe Gibbs Racing. I say back. It is a return for Jones, who drove for them from the years 2018 through 2022. It included wins at Darlington, Kansas, Martinsville, and Phoenix over that time, and he made the playoffs each season he raced for them. Last 2 years, he's raced for Junior Motorsports. He made the playoffs in 2023, but you notice we didn't say his name when we did the rundown. He's sitting outside the points this year with no wins, and he's 132 points out in 12th.
And he would be the one to slip up and win this weekend.
He would. I would agree with that. And I'm certainly not going to discount him, but pointing his way in is pretty much impossible.
Yeah.
So that'll leave Junior Motorsports looking for another driver, but they're not worried about that right now. That'll happen later. Junior Motorsports is worried about other things, like those who are in the playoffs right now. And effective this weekend at Atlanta, they're swapping crew chiefs for two of their teams because they want to try and help Brandon Jones make the playoffs. They're going to take Adam Wall, crew chief for Sammy Smith so far this year, and going to put him in charge of Brandon Jones's car. And Philip Bell is going to move the opposite way to call the shots for Smith. Now, Smith is currently one of the last ones in to the Xfinity Series playoffs. Doesn't have a win. He's a few points over the cut line, just ahead of Ryan Sieg. Brandon Jones, as we said, in a must-win situation, 132 points under, 3 DNFs help contribute to that deficit. So it'll be interesting to see if this makes all the difference in the world or not. Because, again, neither of these guys have a win. But I think the DNFs might have been what kind of pushed this.
Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to do it 2 races before the cutoff. You got one barely in and the other one is at the state line trying to look in. You know,
upsetting the chemistry of the team?
Yeah. That would upset the chemistry.
Yeah. I mean, could it end up being a benefit? We don't know. Yeah, maybe. It could. But yeah, you do risk in a situation like this upsetting the chemistry of a team who's 132 points under, yes, but you're also risking upsetting the chemistry of a team that's fighting for that final playoff spot and is only 5 points over.
Very, very, very much so.
Over at Joe Gibbs Racing, you'll note this weekend that one Xfinity ride and one Cup Series ride have a new sponsor, and it is CW Sports. Remember, the CW network set to take over Xfinity Series broadcasts when the playoffs begin. And to help publicize that, the CW Sports logo is going to adorn the hood of 2 JGR entries this weekend. They'll be on Sheldon Creed's ride today in the Xfinity Series race. Tomorrow, they'll be on the hood of Ty Gibbs in the Cup Series event. Gibbs is also set to carry the Cup Series or the CW Sports logo on the hood next weekend at Watkins Glen. And then we'll be ready to go playoff racing when the CW takes over with the help of NBC Productions. Let me make that perfectly clear.
Yeah.
CW doesn't have everything fully set for this, and they've got themselves concentrating on ACC football, so they haven't built up the production crew yet for the Xfinity operation, so they're relying on NBC Sports, their cameras, their crew, their announcers, but it'll all just be over on the CW.
Right.
So it'll look remarkably similar to what NBC is doing right now.
Right.
And then there's one more note on NASCAR. They said that they aren't planning on doing anything more to Iowa Speedway's racing surface before the 2025 racing season takes place. I mentioned this during just setting NASCAR aside, and it's only because NASCAR owns the Newton, Iowa-based track, but it's not just one series. The Cup Series race there, the Xfinity Series race there. We've seen the Truck Series race there in the past. Oh, by the way, Indycar races there on a quite popular weekend that's a doubleheader weekend as well. So I put it separately out here because of the fact that it does cover all of that stuff. And you might remember that they repaved turns 1 and 2 and turns 3 and 4 this year, but they left the straights alone, and it made some wonder if maybe a full track repave was coming soon. The front and back stretches continue with the original pavement that was laid down back in 2006. So when the question was posed to track president Eric Peterson, he talked to the Des Moines Register, newspapers. Remember, kids? He said that the track is not set to be repaved for 2025, despite the drivers from both NASCAR's Cup and Xfinity Series plus the NTT IndyCar Series giving some mixed reviews to the partial repave. Most of them liked the way that it felt in the corners. They were when it came to the straights. I know enough about Iowa to know this. They get really, really nice summers. They're on the plains. You can't see the Rockies from there, but you're getting a nice breeze off of the Rockies. Mm-hmm. Generally, if it gets 90 degrees, that's a really hot day in Iowa. That's a day in the summer here in Alabama that we go, hey.
Is that all?
I might need to break out a jacket.
Yeah.
But up there, that's a really hot day. On the other hand, the winters, there are a good number of days when the high temperature does not reach 0. And a whole lot of snow. And those kind of temperature changes and that kind of severe kind of weather wreaks havoc on a track surface and a road surface.
From that weather's the surface up there from the aspect of where the changing from cold to heat, because it can get really cold down here and it can get really hot, just like Texas, Talladega, Atlanta. I would go Charlotte.
Yeah, maybe Nashville, but Nashville's concrete so it's a little less affected by it.
Homestead, no. Daytona, no.
No, more rain than anything else.
Mainly those 4, I would say, take the biggest beating from a weathering, because even though Talladega was paved in 2006, she's showing a little age.
Yeah, I mean, you start putting 20 years on a track that is in that kind of an extreme weather situation that we've gotten here. I mean, we've seen numerous days this summer over 100.
Yeah,
and we will go, and heck, there were a few days, I want to say it was January, I think it was, that we didn't get above freezing for a high.
There was a few.
Welcome to Alabama. So, yeah, I mean, it wreaks havoc on pavement. Mm-hmm. Kansas had problems from the first repave. They had to repave it much faster than I think they ever wanted to, because they really didn't set it up for what they ended up getting over there. Yep. You mentioned Texas. Atlanta, I mean, you and I had the chance to go over there just before they did the repave, and we've seen it, of course, since the repave.
Seen it in both forms, yep.
Yeah, and you want to talk about the weather doing a number. And it did. And did it make the racing fun and exciting for us as fans and for the drivers? Yes, it did. But you and I admitted, it's time. It's time for this track to get a repave. It's, you can say what you want about whether or not we think that they did the right thing by increasing the banking and effectively making it a mini super speedway.
Yeah. But
we can't argue with the results when you think about what we saw in the first race this year.
Not at all.
Oof.
Not at all.
To the IndyCar series, after last weekend's doubleheader racing in Milwaukee, 2024 NTT IndyCar Rookie of the Year is officially set. Linus Lundqvist clinched it. 25-year-old from Sweden claimed enough points over the weekend to put the race for that out of reach, continuing a run that began with his Indy Lights title back in 2022, getting several IndyCar starts in 2023 with Meyer Shank Racing before he joined Chip Ganassi Racing this year. His main competition has been his own Chip Ganassi Racing teammate, Kiffin Simpson. He's third in Chip Ganassi racing driver. He's the third, I should say, Chip Ganassi racing driver to claim Rookie of the Year honors over the past 5 years. Felix Rosenquist did it back in 2019. Marcus Armstrong did it in 2023. We're going to come back to that. AJ Foyt Racing is finally seeing results of their technical alliance with Team Penske. It was best illustrated by, Santino Ferrucci, taking that signature number 14 entry and getting 2 top 5 finishes. When's the last time we said that? Saturday race at the Milwaukee Mile made IndyCar history. He started 12th, and as the race progressed, he slid up and back. He ultimately tallied 63 passes on the day, the most ever at the Milwaukee Mile for the series, and the most passes in any single race by any one particular driver this year alone.
That's a lot.
Pair of top 4s for Santino Ferrucci. And he's technically, we didn't go down this far because he's not eligible mathematically to be able to jump up there and claim the IndyCar title. But he's sitting in the top 10 in points.
Yeah.
We haven't said this about an AJ Foyt entry in I don't know how long.
Maybe ever.
Maybe not.
That I can recall.
So whatever they're doing over there, Larry and the gang, keep it up. You're doing good.
There's something that I seen that just come to me
Okay.
that I saw yesterday. And it kind of goes back to the tie-in of doing the double.
Okay.
I saw yesterday that with the upcoming race in Mexico City next year, that Zach Brown has already given Pato O'Ward his blessing that if he can find an Xfinity Series ride for the Saturday race at Mexico City, he will excuse him from running the IndyCar race at Gateway.
Wow. Okay. That'd be big. This goes back to that whole Kyle Larson argument that we had earlier this year running the double.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 17 car will be headed to Mexico City. It makes too much sense.
Yeah.
Too much sense.
With the connection between Arrow McLaren and Hendrick, yeah, it does.
Larson to McLaren, Pato to Hendrick, Chevrolet to Chevrolet. Because Denny Hamlin struck it up during the media days and said, it makes a lot of sense for Pato O'Ward to find a ride to run in Mexico City, but I don't see a Chevrolet Toyota crossover. Because if Denny Hamlin could pull Pato O'Ward, he would pull Pato O'Ward. If you can pull Montoya out of mothballs for next week,
sure,
he could pull Pato O'Ward.
Absolutely. Wow. Okay. That'll be interesting to see. We'll have to see, and we'll keep an eye on that. Had another milestone set when Connor Daly was able to race his Uncos Hollinger entry to a third-place finish over the weekend. We talked about that in the recap. Marked his team's first ever IndyCar podium finish. This is big also because it moves them closer to a spot in the leaders' circle. That actually might be a little more important.
Yeah.
Why? IndyCar wants to implement the charter system. Remember, we talked about that. The leader circle qualifiers guaranteed to get charters, but even more importantly, leaders circle participants get bonus money at the end of the year. Daly, who took over for Agustin Canapino, seems to have settled the car into a pretty good pattern. He is also fighting for a full-time ride, so hey, third place finish helps that cause too.
Definitely doesn't hurt.
I'd be surprised if he's not in that car full-time next year.
True.
With that reported plan for a charter system in IndyCar, the charter system would, under the proposal that we've heard, limit teams to 3 full-time rides. And because of that, it leaves Chip Ganassi with very little choice. They announced this week they will, at the end of this year, downsize and then added a little bit of a bombshell after that. First, again, with the plans for the charter system, downsized news was expected. Teams going to be limited to 3. The only team currently over 3 was Chip Ganassi, who this year is fielding 5 full-time racers. The team announced Wednesday that for 2025, the 4 and 11 cars will not be in their stable. They're going to keep the 8, the 9, and the 10, driven this year by Linus Lundqvist, Scott Dixon, and Alex Palou, respectively. They're the ones also that are eligible to get the new charters. The 4 and the 11 are not. So what's going to happen to the 2 drivers being displaced? Well, Kiffin Simpson, as we mentioned, is the Rookie of the Year runner-up. He drives the 4 car. He may take Linus Lundqvist's seat because Lundqvist technically is not signed to Chip Ganassi past this year.
If it was me, I would be signing Lundqvist back.
More on that in a moment. Also, with 2 cars going away, CGR set to lay off employees, right? No. The team announced that they're planning on getting back into racing in the top IndyCar feeder series, Indy Next. They're going with a 2-car operation there, so you drop 2 operations from your top level. You just move all those employees down to Indy Next. Not bad. They're going to go with the 2-car operations. The 3rd foray, by the way, into the series for Ganassi, but this time they have not announced who their drivers will be. Now, I mentioned the whole Lundqvist situation because of this. Meyer Shank Racing is looking for a driver for 2025. They want to pair one with the returning Felix Rosenqvist. And you say, well, they've already got a driver there right now, right? It's David Malukas. Yes, indeed. But Malukas has already announced he's moving to AJ Foyt Racing for 2025. Leaves that seat available. Mike Schenk talked to Racer.com. Quote, we haven't chosen anyone, but all those people you're hearing about, like Marcus Armstrong, Linus Lundqvist, Lewis Foster, they're all in play. We just talked to Alexander Rossi. We're still working on it. He added that the announcement needs to be made soon, citing October 1st as a deadline. Here's why I keep mentioning Lundqvist. Again, no contract after this year.
Yeah.
You look at Kiffin Simpson, he signed a multi-year deal with Chip Ganassi. That's why he's likely to move into that car. And in the end, I get it, Lundqvist did win the Rookie of the Year. But you're really not dropping off all that much. We have talked about Kiffin Simpson almost as much as we've talked about Linus Lundqvist this year.
Yeah.
So, and he's with a good group of guys when you see who he's going to be sticking with at Chip Ganassi Racing. Linus Lundqvist, he'll find a ride.
Yep.
Rookie of the Year in his performance this year, he'll find a ride.
Sure.
All right, Coach, go knock it out. Go get the kids taken care of.
Let's go 1-0, boys.
We look forward to hearing about this next week on the show. Meantime, I soldier on solo from here. Your comments on CRN Live on YouTube are welcome. I'll address those as we go along, and we'll soldier on CRN next.
Go. racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
You'll pardon me as I may end up getting some things wrong here in this hour because for the first time ever, I'm not only running the radio side, and I'm used to this, okay? I've been doing radio since 1987. I'm used to running boards of different kinds and producing my own show and producing other people's shows. It's what I do during the weekday anyway. But now I'm doing what producer John and Matt have been doing, which is also producing the YouTube side. So if I hit a wrong button, I'm going to say it right now. I apologize. For those of you just joining us because you're used to us being on at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time, sorry, you missed an hour. We are going to be leaving the air an hour early because of a kickoff for Georgia, which our flagship radio station affiliate is an affiliate of as well. And, well, to make sure that we got 2 hours, we went on an hour early. We talked about Meyer Shank Racing, talked about among several of the drivers that they have to choose from. They got a pretty good number of people that they could choose from. Linus Lundqvist, 2024 Rookie of the Year, newly stated as of just last week. Marcus Armstrong's out there. Alex Rossi's out there. Mike Shank, in talking to Racer.com, said that the announcement, he really wants it to be made soon. He cited October 1st as a deadline. So really, when you think about it, he's got the entire rest of this month. And Nashville's next week. That's the season finale. I wouldn't blame him if he just said, you know what? Let's pump the brakes on worrying about getting this driver situation settled for 2025. Let's try and finish out 2024 on a strong note. Then we'll worry about 2025. And that's probably the best way to go. Because again, with 3 drivers out there like Armstrong and Rossi and Linus Lundqvist, amongst others, he's in a pretty good situation of being able to find a good driver for what is truly a good car. Is it a great car? Probably not. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and argue something that probably isn't true. But at the same time, he does field good cars over at Meyer Shank Racing, so it's an attractive ride. Let's just put it that way. As noted, next week is the season finale, the championship deciding race, Nashville Superspeedway. It's going to get a new wrinkle. Something we don't generally see on the oval tracks. The Firestone alternate tire is going to show up. This is that red sidewall tire that we see all the time at the road and the street course races in the series, but they generally don't take it to the oval tracks. Next weekend, that'll change. Series officials revealed that the rules for Nashville Superspeedway are going to be the same as any road or street course race. Just to refresh, or if you didn't know, all the racers have to use each tire compound in race conditions for at least 2 laps. Now, it could be caution, or could be green. Doesn't have to be under green, could be caution, but you have to run them for at least 2 laps. Firestone's set to provide 6 sets of primary or the black wall tires, 4 sets of the red sidewall alternate or softer compounds. For practice and qualifying, the team will get 1 set of primary black walls, 2 sets of the alternate reds, because in all likelihood, they're going to run the qualifying under the red softer compound tires. Should be interesting. A little bit of strategy play. Indycar also continues to talk about taking the series international. Beyond North America, for example. I mean, you're sitting there thinking, well, they already race in Toronto, so it is. Well, yeah, we're talking beyond North America, like they used to do. But the latest from Penske Entertainment CEO Mark Miles says it likely will begin at least with an off-season international barnstorming tour. This is more than just a one-off now all of a sudden. We're actually talking about scheduling a series of races here, however many that might be. Could be 2, could be 5, for all we know. The most recent attempt to pull together some sort of an exhibition race was for Argentina. Ended up just basically being a Juncos Hollinger racing exhibition. The former driver, Agustin Canapino, being Argentinian. Well, so is Ricardo Juncos for that matter. Proved to be very popular, but the series just hasn't been able to come together and come to grips with a race down in Argentina. Or for that matter, Brazil, even though they used to race there. Mark Miles, who's now 71, says he's been working on this since he joined IndyCar back in 2012. And yeah, for a long time, it was basically a one-off race. Just, here, let's go here and have an exhibition non-points event. Now he's thinking bigger. He wants a series of events. He told Racer.com, quote, first of all, if it were to happen, Mexico would be part of the NTT IndyCar Championship points race. So in other words, North American would include the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Okay, I could see that. He said a drive to there from somewhere like Long Beach or vice versa, part of the championship in the regular season. So I don't even think of that as international in that context. I do think ending at the end of August next year, and that's when the IndyCar season will wrap up next year. It ends on Labor Day weekend of 2025. Miles continued, quote, "We've got an opportunity to have a productive period of time for IndyCar teams and our promotion of an IndyCar International Series," and said that company owner Roger Penske is 100% in on the idea. So Argentina is a possibility. We talked about Brazil just a moment ago. Brazil's got the F1 course that IndyCar used to run on, plus they've got a couple of other courses that you could run on. And there are other places in Central and South America that you might actually be able to go. You might remember IndyCar used to race for points in Japan. You know, that's where Danica Patrick actually won a race. Twin Ring Motegi. Could we go to Australia? We've got several drivers now. Scott Dixon, Scott McLaughlin, just a couple of them from down under or New Zealand. I'm sure they would love to be able to take their cars and race in earnest, even if it's not for points, in their own backyard. It'd be a lot of fun. Be interesting to see if they can get this to come together. And I say if. There's a long way to go on this because you got to figure out a number of things. You got to be able to work with the teams. You got to be able to work with the countries. You got to be able to work with the race courses that you're talking about going to and all the different rules and regulations that come with it. Can it be done? Yes. Will it be done soon? I'm not going to hold my breath. Am I expecting it for 2025, in other words? No, not really. Would I like to see it as soon as 2025? Yes, because you're wrapping up your regular season on Labor Day weekend of next year. That's a lot of time left to go racing, man. A lot of time. It just tells me that at some point in time, they're going to have to look into expanding out their schedule. And I'm not saying you got to go Cup Series and do 36 points races and 38 events when you throw in the All-Star race and stuff like that. 20 races? Up from 17 right now? 20 races? Is that really out of the realm of reality? I don't think so. We'll find out. Diecast collectibles, race cars, long been a very often chosen option for fans who want to show off who their favorite driver is. NASCAR's worked for a long time with Lionel Action Racing for theirs. IndyCar now has a long-term partner with another maker to bring the diecast option to their open wheel fans who show up at their races. IXO Models is their new partner. They just signed an exclusive contract to be the sole provider of collectibles and other accessories beginning with the 2025 season. It's a multi-year deal. Don't know exactly how long this deal is for. We can find out. We'll let you know. They are not an American-based country. I'll state that right up front. I'll let you figure out exactly where those diecast collectibles are going to be built. To Formula One, during the race in Italy, Kevin Magnussen, who finished 10th place, got a point. Kind of a rare deal for him this year. We haven't talked much about him being in points. But he and Pierre Gasly got into each other. They were racing for position, and their wheels touched. This is, in F1 terms, a collision. And when they did the investigation, race stewards initially deemed Magnussen, quote, wholly to blame, unquote, for the contact. They assessed him a 10-second penalty. He did serve it in race, so the 10th place position, it wasn't like he actually finished, hit the start the finish line in 9th and the 10-second penalty dropped him back. No, he served it in race and still finished 10th. But more importantly, they added a 2-point penalty onto his F1 super license. 10-second penalty, again, not a problem. The 2-point penalty, that's another story. We talked a little bit about this during the Cross Flags podcast, so if you want to get a little bit more in depth on this, by all means, please do watch that. And again, that's where our Cup Series playoff predictions are as well. But the 2-point penalty adds the 2 more points onto his total. That gives him 12 points in the last 12 months, and it means that he is, at least as of right now, going to be sitting out the next race. That's next weekend's race, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Could he appeal? Yeah, he could. Would it work? Probably not. Just saying. We talk about appeals in NASCAR being very, very unlikely to see overturns, but we'll we will probably see 10 overturns of a penalty in NASCAR before we will see the FIA reverse their decision when it comes to assessing a 2-point penalty on a F1 super license. Pierre Gasly was asked about it after the fact. He said, quote, "Somebody told me you got a 10-second penalty. I'm a bit surprised by that. It was a bit of wheel to wheel, but in the end, I didn't lose any time, so I'm a bit surprised." When told that Magnussen was facing the one-race ban, he turned a little bit more serious in the post-race interview. Quote, "I hope somehow they can revert on that, because that would be definitely unfair. When you're close to a penalty, you can't approach racing properly or the way that you want. I was in a similar situation for different reasons. It's not a nice position to be in. And when asked if he would address the situation with the officials, he replied, quote, "I'd be happy to do it. Got a drug test coming up, so I'm going to waste an hour. After that, I'll see what I can do. That would feel very unfair for the incident that it was." And it wasn't that much. But it has a lot to do with the fact that Gasly was technically ahead of Kevin Magnussen. But Kevin Magnussen had the inside line going into turn 4 in this particular lap. They just happened to touch wheels. I mean, this could be considered as much Pierre Gasly's fault for maybe cutting it a little too close because he was trying to cut off Kevin Magnussen as it is Kevin Magnussen maybe driving a little bit too deep to get in there. Again, this is a judgment call. Do I agree with all judgment calls? Ooh, heck no. And I'm not sure I agree with it on this one. When Kevin Magnussen was asked about it, he replied, quote, "I don't know what's going on with these penalties. I mean, what's the point? We had a slight contact in turn 4, no damage on either car. It had no consequence. Nobody lost anything. We both missed the corner, but hey, we're racing. I just don't get the point, honestly. I saw Nico almost hit the barrier in the contact with Daniel Ricciardo. Ricciardo got 5 seconds. I get 10 seconds for this. At this point, I don't know what's going on." When asked if he was set to talk to race stewards, he replied, "Yeah, I have to. Doesn't make any sense. Makes zero sense." Again, I agree with him on this. You know, you cause a collision, that's one thing. And open wheel cars are very vastly different from stock cars. I get it. You can beat and bang in stock cars pretty much all day long. You know, bump, slam your tire up against the door, whatever, tends to do very little to you. Open wheel, yeah, you tend to maybe create a little bit more damage as you go through if you have wheel-to-wheel contact. But in this case, it didn't happen. You get a situation again where Ricciardo gets a 5-second penalty and Nico Hülkenberg almost slams into a wall. These guys continued racing on. Nothing happened. No spin outs, no nothing. I'm not sure what the difference is. And the thing about it is the race stewards aren't going to look at the public and say, here's where our thinking is. But at this point in time, all I can think of is the fact that because Kevin Magnussen had 10 points and he has a record, then they're judging him more harshly? Is that fair? Not really. It's a bit over the top. But the FAA are the one and only when it comes to that, right? Okay. Now, we expected on our podcast Cross Flags that we felt like it was probable that Ferrari and Haas F1 driver Ollie Behrman was going to fill in for Magnussen. That got confirmed on Friday. The 2025 Haas driver is going to get to check out his new team in race form a little bit early. We said we expected it because on Wednesday it hadn't been officially announced. And the reason why it hadn't been announced was because of the fact that, like we just said, he is the top reserve driver for both Ferrari and Haas F1. Seems pretty unlikely that either Carlos Sainz or Charles Leclerc is going to miss next week, so they went ahead and pulled the trigger on the deal and said Friday that officially he's going to be there. Now, Behrman does have that one F1 start to his credit. He filled in earlier this year for soon-to-be Williams driver Carlos Sainz when he was having his appendectomy. He was able to finish the race in 7th place. All of 19 years old, Behrman's going to get a taste of his new team. Next year, he pairs with Esteban Ocon. This time, he'll pair with Nico Hülkenberg. He has had, I want to say, 3 or 4 FP1 practice sessions with the team. But again, a practice session and race conditions, they're two different things. Every single driver will tell you that. This time he'll get to have it in race condition, and the good news is that he's already had a race under his belt, so he has kind of a baseline to be able to figure out exactly what this car can and can't do. It'll be interesting to see what he's able to do. Now, again, Ferrari is in third place in the Constructors' Cup points and only about 40-ish points out of first with more than 300. Haas F1, they've got 28 points. I'm not expecting huge things, but if Kevin Magnussen can get a 10th place finish out of that car, Ollie Behrman, I think that's your goal. That's your bar. You're trying to get over that 10th place that Kevin Magnussen got just a week ago. And I get it, you're in Azerbaijan as opposed to the Italian Grand Prix in Monza. But still, I think that's a good bar. That's your high jump point. Try and get into the top 10.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network.
When you have to have service work done at your house.
Back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Hey, welcome back into the show. For those of you that are just now joining, I'm Steve West, and I'm solo. Producer John, not able to be with us this weekend. He's off all weekend long, and he's taking care of his other half, who is feeling a bit under the weather. And as it turned out, John apparently caught it. So he's feeling a bit under the weather. So, be thinking about both of them, John and his wife, and Matt, who was with us for hour number 1 here because we kicked off early. I use that term very carefully. He now has to go and get prepared for a kickoff of his own. as his youth football team is ready to play a game. So he was with us early, but had to go and get prepared for the kids to go get into their football game as well. So here I sit solo. But you know what? Talking about something I love to talk about, and I know that you guys love to listen to it, and we, all of us here, whether we're here physically this morning or not, appreciate you joining us this morning. Talking a little Formula One here, and we've already been through hour one, talked about this. Our flagship station, radio station affiliate, is also an affiliate of the Georgia Bulldogs, who have a 1 p.m. Central Time kickoff. They got a 4-hour-long pregame show, of which our radio station affiliate also plays the entirety of. So we got to be out in that time. So to continue to do 2 hours, we decided to go on an hour early. So we're talking a little F1 here. Incoming 2025 Mercedes rookie Kimi Antonelli has announced his racing number. Remember, in Formula One, your number gets announced right off the bat. And once he or she selects it, that driver has that number for the rest of their career, regardless of team, with the caveat that it has to have been sitting idle. In other words, nobody could have used it for at least 2 years, because we don't know, maybe that driver will come back. Witness Nico Hülkenberg. In a press conference this past weekend, Antonelli said that he prefers the number 12, a number he said he's used over the last couple of seasons, winning titles in the F1 feeder series, different ones. So that's the number that in all likelihood he will get, because I looked into it, hasn't been used in the last couple of years. Meanwhile, F1 officials have replied to concerns by several teams over the front wings of McLaren and Mercedes. Red Bull and Ferrari have been the most vocal about the front wings, which have kind of turned the seasons around for both teams. Red Bull, you might remember, came out in 2025 like a house on fire. McLaren and Mercedes, though, each have 3 wins since the May Miami Grand Prix, when the teams introduced the new front wings. Red Bull and Ferrari are concerned that it flouts the rules. They state that the front wing, it's too flexible, beyond what is allowed in the rules. Showed video of the McLaren front wing at the Italian Grand Prix, and it seemed to show the front wing flexing as the racer headed down the front straight, or a straightaway, but it became more upright and firm as the car entered, for example, the famed Parabolica corner. FIA reviewed the video, released a statement after, said, quote, "The FIA is examining front wings at every event with numerous checks, conformity of surfaces, conformity of deflections, things like that, all with respect to being relevant to F1 technical regulation. All front wings are currently compliant with the 2024 regulations." Since the Belgian Grand Prix, the FIA has acquired additional data during FP1 and FP2 sessions to assess dynamic behaviors through an FIA-mandated video camera, which captures the areas of the front wings which are not visible through the official FOM cameras. This exercise will continue at least up until Singapore to ensure every team will have been running the mandated FIA camera on different types of tracks, low, medium, and high, and very high downforce. And all this will ensure a large database, allowing the FIA to draw the most objective picture of the situation and quantify the differences between the various dynamic patterns observed on the track. All of that to say, basically, yeah, we didn't find anything wrong with the wings. Christian Horner basically has said, if you can't beat him, join him. Noted that his Red Bull team continues development on their 2024 racers and are likely to adopt a very similar front wing, saying, quote, if it is acceptable, you have to join it, if it works. As for Ferrari, team principal Fred Vasseur decided not to comment on either the FIA decision or as to whether or not Ferrari will be looking into developing a similar front wing for their racers. But hey, I look at it this way, kind of like Red Bull. If you can't beat them, join them. Try and figure out a way that for you works with your car and go slap that front wing on there. I would expect several other teams to do the exact same thing, especially if you're a backmarker operation. If you're Sauber, who has 0 points on the year, if you're Williams, who has 13th and is currently firmly planted in 9th, you know, if you're Haas F1 and you're fighting to get out of 8th, I'm sorry, it wasn't Williams, it was Alpine. But, if you're one of the bottom 4, 5 in the standings, and you have the chance, because with the number of races that you've got left, you could actually score some pretty good points and be able to move up either out of the cellar or maybe from 8th to 7th or 7th to 6th. Heck, from 8th to 6th is not that big of a jump. If you really look at it, Aston Martin's sitting there with 50. Haas F1 is 2 positions behind him. They got 28. If I'm Haas F1, I'm looking at it. If I'm Williams, especially if I'm Sauber. If I'm Sauber and I've got 0 points on the year and I really don't have any prospects of thinking that's going to change anytime too soon, yeah, I'm going to study the wings from McLaren and Mercedes as much as I possibly can, and let me see if I can't figure out a way to put that on my car. Absolutely. At this point in time, what do you got to lose? Nothing. You're already at 0. With the announcement that Carlos Sainz is set to move to Williams for 2025, F1 seats are beginning to fill pretty quick, but there's still 1 seat left open, and that is at Sauber. Remember, they're going to become Audi come 2026, so they just got to figure out whether or not Nico Hülkenberg we know this. Nico Hülkenberg is going to be there. He signed a multi-year deal. He moves from Haas F1 to Sauber for 2025, and he'll be there when they go from Sauber to Audi in 2026. But they haven't confirmed who he's going to team with. Mattia Binotto, the newly installed Sauber Motorsport boss, said he's considering a number of drivers, but noted 2 in particular. One is a guy who we're very familiar with because he's been running a heck of a lot in IndyCar this year. His name, Théo Pourchaire. Then there's another name that you likely haven't heard, Gabriel Bortoleto. Now, Athena overseas may have heard. Just saying. But for us here in the United States, might not be all that familiar. Pourchaire, again, very familiar because of his IndyCar exploits this year. He's opened some eyes, might be in line for a full-time ride there if he wants one. Plus, again, he is Sauber's top reserve driver, so he might have the inside track to that. And most drivers would tell you, in the situation that Théo Pourchaire is in, F1 might be their priority, but they also come to realizations over time that says, IndyCar may be a much more likely possibility for me to get much more regular racing. So we'll find out whether or not he chooses which one and who Sauber chooses. As for Bortoleto, he's running for McLaren in Formula 2, picked up the win at Monza last weekend, sits only 10 points off of the lead in F2 points right now. So a couple of pretty good choices there. But again, he's driving for McLaren. Is McLaren willing to let him go? And that's something that we don't have an answer to right now. I'd say Théo Pourchaire might be your guy. Just saying. To the NHRA here, and we talked about it at the top of the show. Very, very nice runs here and setting up the entire chase for the championship. 12 drivers in Top Fuel, for example, another 12 in Funny Car, another 12 in Pro Stock Car. It's going to be fun. And it's going to be fun to watch over the next 6 weeks. Not this weekend. They're off this weekend, but they'll begin racing in earnest in Pennsylvania next weekend. It's going to be fun to watch this situation, especially with Jack Beckman, for example, filling in for John Force. John Force getting credit for all the points. It's going to be a lot of fun. But some history was made last weekend where Aaron Stanfield was able to claim 2 class wins. We noted during the race recap he had won the Pro Stock Car division. Earlier in the weekend, Sunday, he claimed the division's win in Factory X. He's the first driver in 70 years of U.S. Nationals history to claim class wins in 2 divisions on the same weekend. Factory X division, we've talked about it here on the show, but we haven't detailed it that much. Haven't talked about it in a while. In fact, this is the division for the older cars that the car companies allowed for sale to the general public in. Read Factory Stock Showdown. But Factory Stock Showdown, you have to have the latest model. Factory X allows you to grab older ones and still participate in them. Stanfield running an older Copo Camaro gunned it to a 7.094 ET, and that Bernard Lenny Lottig 7.122 to claim the win. And again, Factory X sounds a lot like Factory Stock Showdown, and they're very similar high-performance race cars you could have purchased yourself if you had enough money. We looked them up. Oh, gosh, I've looked them up the last couple of years because I haven't gotten an email from them for a while, which is not necessarily the worst thing because, good grief, I'm getting enough spam in this political year. But I used to be on the Chevrolet list, and one of those emails that they sent out to me was actually an invitation to place an order for a Copo Camaro. Well, being the guy that I am, I'm like, well, I know for a fact I can't afford it, but let's go find out how much it's going to cost to get a Copo Camaro. And there are 3 levels of performance. There were 3 levels of performance for the one that I looked up, and I want to say it was the 2024 model. And all of them were over $100,000. The top, or level 3 performance, was $124,000. I don't have that kind of money. It's what my house cost, back when things were realistic. But yeah, $124,000 is what the house that my wife and I live in cost. If I tried to buy a drag race prepped only Copo Camaro and I told my wife how much that cost, I wouldn't be married. I'd be living in the car because I would get kicked out. Same thing with the Scat Pack Dodge Challenger. Same thing with the Cobra Jet Ford Mustang. They're all in that same area. Okay? And they're nice. No, don't get me wrong. Factory X, again, allows you to go back and take some of the older models, the ones that have effectively timed out of the factory stock showdown, and you can go back and do that. And you can do some race prepping that you couldn't do in factory stock showdown as well. Going into as of last weekend, let's put it this way, Stanfield leads the Factory X standings by 35 points as he went into last weekend. So he actually expanded on it with 3 races left in the division: St. Louis, Dallas, and Las Vegas. So they're not going to be racing at the season finale in Fontana, California. They'll wrap up a week before. And we talked a little bit about diecast collections in IndyCar, and noted it in NASCAR as well. NASCAR's long had a deal with Lionel. IndyCar's got their new one with IXO models, and now the NHRA has actually worked out a deal as well. Actually, it's an extension of their long-running deal with Hot Wheels. It's set to continue under a contract extension announced just this week. Mattel Incorporated, which is the parent company of Hot Wheels, and think about this for a minute. Mattel owns Hot Wheels. What else does Mattel own? Matchbox. Those two used to be such serious competitors. I mean, think about that for a minute. Those two used to be heated competitors. And I love Hot Wheels. And I loved Matchbox cars when I was a kid. Heck, I might still have some in a box somewhere, for all I know. Loved them both as a kid, but they were both highly competitive against each other because Matchbox looked to make everything as authentic to the street car that you saw as possible. Matchbox, they'd come out with some really, really wild stuff, but they would make sure that it rolled a little bit faster, had a little bit better performance, a little less friction, so to speak, so it would, run down the tracks a lot faster and things like that. I had a combination of the two. I loved them all. They were fantastic to play with and just all kinds of fun for a kid like me who was fascinated with cars anyway. And then to find out that Mattel's able to go out and buy Hot Wheels. Now they own both. Oof. Anyway, the Mattel Incorporated said that the deal with the NHRA is going to see them be able to create current racers for fans, but they're also set to expand upon the classic hot rod offerings as well. In the plans for the next year or so, they have plans to release a 1976 Chevy Chevette funny car and a 1971 Ford Mustang funny car. And those are just the ones announced to be in the works. I've seen pictures of the Chevette funny car. And think about this, stuffing a V8 under the hood of a Chevy Chevette and then prepping it for racing. Those things were really, really light and became ridiculously fast, which is why they were pretty popular amongst racers back in the time, kind of like a Chevy Vega. Remember those? Really, really cool car in drag form. And the way that they're putting it out there, they're putting it on the back of a truck, a hauler, an open hauler, basically. It's flatbed truck for all intents and purposes. Really, really good-looking diecast model. So if you're into that sort of thing, might just be something you want to keep an eye out for. We got a couple of more notes here. Formula E is what we're going to talk about, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what Matt and I dealt with on crossed flags on Wednesday, and remind you of what's going on this weekend as well. And then we'll get prepared because, yeah, we're going to have to turn things over to college football here. So one more segment left here on this edition of CRN. Hope you stick with us through this break, and we will be right back.
We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
All the juggling that I'm doing over here. Again, this is my first time doing this. They left me all alone. What the heck is up with that, Producer John? Usually when Matt's not here, you're here. I blame you, John. He's under the weather and taking care of his wife at the same time, who's also under the weather. And Matt, the reason he's not here and on camera is because of the fact that he has coaching to do. That's right. Game number 1, officially, of his youth football team. And they are playing today, so the best of luck to his team. And that's what he's off doing. So it leaves me here doing the radio side, which, as I talked about a little bit earlier, yeah, I'm used to that. Been doing radio for a very long time. Been doing it since the late 1980s. Doing the YouTube side, this is all brand new. Seems to be going pretty well. Let me know if it's not. Let's see. One more series to talk about here, and that's Formula E, where some weeks ago we noted the 2024-2025 Formula E schedule. It includes the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And that's controversial enough because, well, it's Saudi Arabia, and they don't have, well, let's just say they don't have the best record when it comes to human rights. But since its inception, the Formula E race has run in the city of Diriyah. Dates back to 2018. Not so for next year. It's changed. With the approval of the Saudi Arabian Ministry of Sport, the series is set to move to where Formula One races, the Jeddah course. It's going to run on a shorter version of the track the Formula One uses, as they usually do, but still, it's going to happen if, and I don't understand why it wouldn't be, if it is approved by the World Motorsport Council, which they're the people that are above even the FIA, and changes like this for some reason have to go through the World Motorsport Council. Again, it's expected to be rubber stamped. I mean, if Formula One can run there, surely Formula E can, right? Meanwhile, silly season continues on. Now, preseason testing for Formula E actually comes up in about 5 or 6 weeks. Mid to late October is when they're going to do preseason testing in Formula E. So with, like I said, about 5 or 6 weeks or so to go, a lot of the seats have already filled up. But while most teams are trying to fill seats, Nissan has actually decided that they're going to make a change and do it now. I don't know why they didn't do it right after the season ended, but they did it now. They've decided to part ways with Sasha Fenestras. He joined the team for the 2022-2023 season, but his second year was a downturn, and Nissan has decided that they're going to look elsewhere. Oliver Rowland, who's the other driver for Nissan, consistently outqualified and performed better than Fenestras pretty much in almost every one of the races in the season just ended. Rowland ended up with 2 wins on the year. He was a title contender. Fenestras, he never even got a podium finish. His best finish of the year was 5th. He ended up 17th in the final standings, far behind Oliver Rowland's standing. Nissan said that they're evaluating all their options for their final driver lineup for the upcoming season. One of those options, however, is gone. DS Penske announced they've signed Max Gunther to drive as a teammate to Jean-Eric Vergne. Gunther takes over for Stoffel Van Dorn. Stoffel Van Dorn left DS Penske for Maserati. Max Gunther raced last year for Maserati. So effectively, DS Penske and Maserati have traded Stoffel Van Dorn for Max Gunther. And a set of tires to be named later? I don't know. Gunther drove for Maserati the last 2 years, won it twice, but lacked consistency, even though he did finish in the top 10 in the final standings in both years. Before Maserati, he drove for Nissan for a season. Before that, he was with BMW, claiming 2 wins, while that company spent a short time in Formula E. And where he began his Formula E career was with Dragon Penske Racing. So really, he's making a return. It's a homecoming for Max Gunther to his first team. Thing about it is, this team under DS as DS Penske, their fortunes are a lot better than what they were when they were Dragon Penske. They were kind of bottom feeders, except for really about the first year, maybe 2 in the series, going back a decade ago. They came out pretty good, and they were, fighting for wins and, pretty consistently getting championship points. But I don't know what happened from about year 3 to about year 8. No, not much. DS comes in as a partner. They drop the Dragon side, becomes DS Penske, and now all of a sudden they're starting to fight for wins again. So Max Gunther might have just found himself in a good position. Mentioned again, this weekend's racing is in Atlanta. Xfinity Series running today. 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time, USA, PRN Radio. NBC is going to be busy doing college football. Then there's pro football tomorrow, so NBC is going to be busy doing that. So Cup Series event, Quaker State 400 available at Walmart, USA and PRN Radio, again, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. I'm going to be there tomorrow, so next week I'll be able to talk to you about it live and in person, the opening race for the Cup Series playoffs. Should be interesting to see. And if you missed hour one, you missed a lot. And I'll let you know, usually Matt and I specifically, John generally doesn't do it, but we make our Cup Series predictions. We did so on the Crossed Flags podcast because we knew that he wasn't going to be, Matt, available all show long. So I'll just let you know right now, we made our Cup Series predictions. I'm not going to give you all the details, but I'll play spoiler alert. How's this? See how we got from 16 drivers eligible as of this weekend to win the title to who we picked as our title winners. I picked Kyle Larson. Yeah, I know, front runner. But I look at his body of work this year, all the things that he's done all year long, and I look at the races that are coming up in the playoffs. It seems to lay out for him. Now, it could lay out for a couple of other drivers. There are a couple other drivers who this really, really fits for, that really like this lineup of these 10 tracks that we're coming to. But Kyle Larson just sticks out to me like a sore thumb as the driver who's been so consistent all year long. And you say, well, what about a guy like Denny Hamlin? That's Matt's choice to claim his first ever Cup championship. I couldn't pick him. And I'll tell you why. I don't know what it is, why it happens. And truth be told, it doesn't really matter because either way it happens. For whatever reason, something happens to that 11 car or the 11 team, and they stub their toe if they don't outright shoot themselves in the foot and keep themselves from winning titles. They've been close many, many times. They seem like the guy to beat. They seem like the car to beat. They seem like they've got everything going on, and then they do something. A speeding penalty on pit road. They have a problem trying to get the car back out there. Whatever it is. Just something small enough to keep them from winning the title. Could he make the Final Four? Yeah, he could. Could he win the title? Yes, that team, that driver, they're all capable of it. I'm not disputing that. They are easily capable of hoisting a Cup Series title and have been really since his rookie year. I'm not disputing the talent on the team with the crew or the crew chief or the driver behind the wheel. Whether you like him or not, Denny Hamlin is a really, really good Cup Series driver who could and is potentially capable of winning the title literally any year he's full-time and qualified to do it. But again, they get to this point of the year and they are snake bits. Something happens and they can't finish the deal. So I couldn't pick him. Matt did. Go back to Cross Flags. It's up available right now on CRN Live on YouTube. And you can figure out how we got to that point where I chose Larson, he chose Hamlin. And the other interesting storyline, and I have said this on many, many occasions, I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying something here that is a secret. When I take the media hat off and I put the fan hat on, that fan hat is a Stewart-Haas Racing fan. I've been a Tony Stewart fan since his rookie year. Have followed Tony since that win at Richmond, his first win with Joe Gibbs Racing in 1999 and all the way up through. And I'm rooting for Stewart-Haas Racing and for Chase Briscoe to come in and park that 14 in victory lane at Darlington and get that car in their final year as Stewart-Haas Racing into the playoffs, and knowing the fact that basically every one of the 300 plus employees at Stewart-Haas Racing is rallying around the 14 team saying, hey, we're going to do anything and everything that we can do to help you. We're going to do it. Doesn't surprise me in the least, right? I'll be interested to see what they can do. And it should be noted that from about 8th, 9th to 16th, there's only about 9 points separating them all. So it's not that simple to just go, okay, Chase Briscoe, Martin Truex Jr., Ty Gibbs, these are all the guys that are 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. Technically, yes, they're all four of them are on the hot seat. But that seat's not ridiculously hot when the amount separating you from being fairly well entrenched inside the top 10 is a handful of points. So Chase Briscoe, who pretty much proved that 14 car could go anywhere and race high, low, and do it with an alarming amount of speed at Atlanta in the springtime. How do we know? Matt and I were there watching that race too. Wouldn't surprise me one single solitary bit if Chase Briscoe actually did advance beyond the round of 16 into the round of 12. A lot of stuff that could happen here, folks, and it's going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun to watch. So keep an eye on it. We'll keep you updated on it right here on CRN next weekend.
So good. It's bigger, and bigger is better. Yeah.